to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that's perfectly balanced, as all things should be. My name is Isaac Edlin, one of the Infinity Bros, and I have a very special guest with me today. It is Sean from Metalcore Nerds. How you doing, Sean?
Doing great, man. Happy to be here. How are you?
I'm doing okay. We mentioned on the Patreon, which you guys can check out the unedited version, that I am sick. You can probably hear that in my voice, but I am doing better because 3 days ago when Sean and I were supposed to record this, my voice was another octave lower than it is now. And I sounded like Tony Todd's Venom in in my voice. So we opted to push it back a little bit, but I'm glad we're finally making time to make this work because I've enjoyed all of your guys' stuff. Plug for the Metalcore Nerds here. But before we get going, Sean, I want to know a little bit about you. So why don't you go ahead and just tell us who you are, what you do, and what the Metalcore Nerds are.
Yes, yeah. Like Isaac said, my name is Sean. I host a podcast called Metalcore Nerds. Basically, the basic premise is I have people from the music and podcast community, and we talk about pop culture. Whether it's if you're into the heavy alternative music space, like we just had the singer of New Year's Day on. We've had members of Bayside, Story of the Year, stuff like that. It's a super fun thing. It allows music people to go on a podcast and talk about something a little bit different than they usually talk about when they have the interviews promoting their new tours or new albums, everything like that. And so that's the basic premise. You can find everything at metalcorners.com. It premieres live every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Adobe Radio Network. And then it goes on the podcasting platforms right after. And then me and my friend Matt Roth from Hopsky News, shout out that dude. We just started a new YouTube series called New Music Fridays. We'll be talking about new music and reviewing albums there. It's very, very fun. And I enjoyed diving a little deeper into the music space with that one.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, I'm wearing one of my only music t-shirts right now. It's a Mouse Rat t-shirt from Parks and Rec. So I thought that was appropriate.
Oh yeah, dude. That's amazing. That's the perfect combination, actually.
Yeah, it's like pop culture, music, just intersecting. It's great.
That's good. I like that.
Sean, thank you so much for that. Shout out to Metalcore Nerds. We'll have the link to their podcast. And you guys have a website, correct? We'll put a link to the website in the show notes as well. But I'm sorry to spring this on you, but I have a segment that I did not prepare you for. I purposefully did not tell you about this. It is the Infinity Gauntlet.
Are you a heel or a baby face? If you could make any flavored Cheez-It, what would it be? Is it pronounced Grogu or Groku? If Keanu Reeves isn't in the movie, can it be star-studded? It's time for the Infinity Gauntlet, here on the Infinity Bros podcast.
Man. So on the Infinity Gauntlet, Sean, I get a couple questions from the Infinity Bros, and we basically grill you to see if you can survive the Infinity Gauntlet. So, and we've never had to kick anybody off the podcast yet. So I do want to reassure you with that. But, our decision will be based on how you answer these questions. So just, a little warning there. But I have a few questions. We're going to go for it. This one is from Infinity Bro Robbie. He asks, outside of Batman, who would be the greatest frontman for a heavy metal band in all of comics?
Ooh, all of comics, though? Man, that's rough.
That's a pretty wide range. Yeah, that's
a wide range. I think Thor would be a really good front man. Honestly, there's so many good options.
Thor would be good though.
Imagine like Venom as a front man.
Yep. Yeah. I feel like he could get some real good, like deep screaming going.
Yeah. I would like Venom as a front man too, or even Carnage if you get real psycho.
Oh gosh, yeah, we're going to real like death metal with Carnage there. Yeah, but I think actually you mentioned Thor. That would be cool because he could do lightning stuff on the stage. That would be sick. That'd be awesome.
A perfect hair metal. Yeah,
absolutely. Oh my gosh, that'd be great
Thor, for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, that's pretty solid. I mean, if you just have all three of those guys in the band, they can take turns being the front guy, like lead singer. That would be pretty fun. That would be wild. All right, that was a good one. All right, next up here is from Infinity Row Mark. He says, which horror franchise or specific horror film would be best served for an MCU adaptation?
So like any normal horror franchise, just
Any normal horror
MCU-fied?
franchise or film, just like did an MCU spin on it.
Huh, interesting. I would love. I'm a big Scream fan. If they did some type of like
Ooh,
murder mystery kind of
yes.
thing within, just like that whole vibe. It doesn't even need to be like meta or anything,
Hmm.
but just like a murder mystery where they have to chase down a killer, and the reveal is something like insane. I think that would be
Yeah,
really cool.
that would be fun. I feel
Yeah,
like we've gotten a kind of a resurgence in like kind of that murder mystery genre
for
of
sure.
film. So that would be really cool to do MCU style for sure.
Yeah, we've never really got anything like that. I mean, obviously they've been experimenting with genre stuff
Oh, okay.
more
Ding,
for
ding,
sure.
ding. Light just went on in my head here. Okay, so in gosh, what is it? I'm trying to remember which comic book run it is, but it's Wolverine ends up like, and they don't. I don't know if it's in a spinoff or, but like in the main run, he ends up killing all the X-Men. Oh, it must be House of M because
Oh yeah,
Scarlet Witch like basically projects that they're all bad guys, and he just kills them all.
yeah,
That would be kind of wild, like a spin on that. Like, who is this like mutant that's killing all of the mutants in like
yeah.
Professor Xavier's like school or whatever?
That would be
And then at the end, you find out it's Wolverine. Like, oh, that would
that'd be
be
a
wild.
twist.
All right, all right.
Damn it, Logan.
Oh, that would be good. All right,
That would be
last
good.
one here. This one's from me. If you had to pick a band to do a soundtrack for an MCU project, what band and project would that be?
Dude, this just came to my mind. Spirit Box and Blade.
Ooh, okay. I'm not familiar with Spirit Box, so you'll have to explain that a little bit. But like anything like metal wise and Blade, I feel like would be sick.
So they're like a female fronted band.
Ooh,
And
okay.
she sings too, and her voice is unreal. It's so good. So they have this awesome like spectrum, but they have some kind of like dancey stuff too, which would kind of work with not like super dancey, but like electronic-y feeling.
Right,
I think
yeah.
it would work really well with
Throwback to the OG Blade movies.
oh yeah.
Electronic and dancey stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that would be like a really cool fit. That'd be so
Nice.
sick. That's
I
like
like
my
that.
big thing. I've been writing articles for Adobe, and a lot of them are like, what if this movie soundtrack was like this? So I may have
Ooh,
one
so
coming out for the
that
Marvels next week.
question was literally right up your alley. So
Yeah, yeah,
pay attention to adobe.com for Sean's next article.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, congratulations, man. You made it through the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yes.
You did it. I don't feel like we have to kick you. Those are all very solid answers.
Thank you.
You can continue being on the Infinity Bros podcast. So
Cool.
congratulations.
Glad
So continuing on here, I just wanted to have a little bit of a chat of what we've been up to. So before we get into that, I do want to plug our rating system bumper.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an Infinity Step.
Do you have specific things that we rate on the Infinity Bros podcast? And that's how we do it. So, Sean, what have you been up to lately? What have you been watching, playing, listening to? What have you been up to lately?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I just got home from vacation. Went to Disney for 5 days with my wife. That was nice. Nice
Ooh,
to
nice.
rode the Guardians ride like 4 times.
Yes.
It was great. It was a good vacation. But on vacation, we watched Killers of the Flower Moon, which I don't know why we picked a 3.5 hour, 4 hour long movie to watch on vacation, but we did.
Wow.
And,
Yeah, that's a long one, dude.
it was so fucking long. I like long movies. That movie was fucking long, man.
Yeah, I would imagine. And okay, did you feel like it was worth going to?
I feel like it was worth watching, but I will never in my life watch that again.
Yeah, it's one of those movies, or I shouldn't even say because I haven't watched it yet, but I feel like it's going to be one of those movies that like you watch and you're like, wow, that was impactful, but I'm not going to rewatch that ever. Like it was good for what it was.
Yeah.
It served its purpose. Like I feel like one of those movies for me is Joker. Like I loved that movie.
Fair.
Joaquin Phoenix is fantastic in it, but dang, that movie is just
Heavy.
depressing and heavy. Yeah. So that's a movie that I probably will never watch again, unless like somebody's like, yeah, let's get a party going to watch Joker for some reason. Like, okay, sure, I'll watch it with you, but like I'm never on my own time going to
Yeah.
choose to rewatch that one probably. But yeah, I totally get that.
It,
Okay, so on our rating scale, what would you rate that in scale of 1 to 6?
I didn't love the movie. I'm gonna be honest.
Oh, okay.
Probably like a 3.5 or something.
Okay.
Maybe a 4.
For me, that 3.54 is like the rewatchable line. Like anything 3 and under, I'm not watching that again.
Yeah.
Like everything above that, yeah, I'll give it another shot.
Yeah, it's just hard because it's obviously well made. It's super well acted.
Mhm.
It's just if you know nothing about it, it's basically it's based on the Osage murders, and I just feel like the point of view of the Osage was like ungodly lacking in the movie.
Right. Yeah.
And Lily Gladstone is in it, and she represents that part, but I feel like she was like highly underutilized. She was great in the movie. It's hard because I feel like it's just like 3 bumbling white dudes who do this super terrible stuff, and it almost feels like a joke sometimes. Like it feels too goofy. Like they're just bumbling idiots who got away with this super terrible stuff, and then when the consequences kind of catch up with them, it doesn't even feel like they're real consequences. And I think that's my biggest problem with it is that, and like a lot of people have been like, "Oh, it's so emotionally draining," and I was like, it didn't land that for me. And I think that's the biggest bummer because I think there's a lot of good in it. It just didn't, like, if I compare it to another movie like Oppenheimer this year, like Oppenheimer this is my favorite movie of the year. I don't think anything's going to top it, and I feel like they did what the Killers of the Flower Moon failed at, where it's like it was long movie, but I never felt the length. I was so engaged throughout the whole thing. It's just the way Killers of the Flower Moon was kind of paced just feels so weird to me. I don't know. You kind of have to watch it to get it, but it just kind of all just happens. And then at the end, you're like, oh, okay, I guess.
Yeah, right.
The third act is the best part because that's like Jesse Plemons as a character, and he comes in and it kind of like really picks up and the story does start to come together. But I don't know, man. didn't love it. Like like I said, it's super well made. Like it's definitely worth watching. And your experience could be totally different than mine. I obviously on the internet, there's a ton of love for this movie. It's a Martin Scorsese movie. Of course, there's going to be. It's just,
and that's kind of my just what I've been hearing from everybody is that it's super well made. There's good acting in it, but it just doesn't like land basically for a lot of people. And Infinity Bro Jarrett, one of our cast members, has family that is native, and so he comes at it from a really unique perspective, and he kind of echoed that, like that, it's just kind of a weird perspective that the movie is like, going at, they should have included more, like native perspective, like you were saying, in the movie. So yeah, I think that's definitely valid. So interesting. What else you been getting into?
My wife and I just randomly out of nowhere started picking back up Sabrina, the Netflix Sabrina show.
Good timing. Halloween just ended, so
Yeah, and that's kind of why we were like, oh, let's watch something kind of Halloween-y, and we never finished the series, so we kind of rewatched most of season 3 and just finished season 3 going into the final season. And it's a lot more melodramatic than I remember for some reason. Maybe it's just because I'm surrounded by so much like very well done mature TV with like Gen V and like Invincible.
Is that a Netflix show? Like, is it back Netflix or is it?
Yeah, it's like Netflix original. I think it's a Warner Brothers TV show technically, but
gotcha. Okay.
I believe it's a Netflix original. But it's like a fun show. Like some of the actors in it, I'm like, man, you are not that great, but most of it is pretty good. It's fun, and they don't shy away from like the gore, which is nice and stuff like that. Which like you can compare. It's like a well-made CW show. It's like a level above a CW show where they let you go that far. They really let you. I mean, and it's like talking about demons and Satan and shit like that. It's pretty cool. There was a funny thing that they deal with some like time stuff in it. and there was like a whole like dialogue thing about time, and Sam's like, you probably love this, don't you? And I was like, actually, it's really not how it would work. And she's like, oh my fucking god.
That's the whole I feel like that's such a nerd thing, like how time works in certain universes.
Yeah, it's just like if you like Loki, when we get into that, it's like the perfect thing where it's like they talk about time loops and stuff like that, but the way it works like doesn't work the same way that like Loki works, which is the way time travel works in Loki is kind of the more rooted in reality. If you talk about time travel, like the way it works, even the time loops within the things, like it works because of how time is set up in the MCU, which I know can be confusing for people because it is kind of fucking confusing. But it was just so funny when she brought up, you probably love this. I was like, not really, because it's not how it would work. And she was like, oh my
god. That's great.
Other than that, I've also been, I started Spider-Man 2 on PS5.
Yes. Yep.
Which has been incredible. I'm not that far in it. I just got to, if anyone's been playing it, I just got to Coney Island. So I'm really not that far in.
Okay. So I started playing it. This was going to be on my list too. So we could talk about this a little bit. This is like almost, I feel like I'm maybe a couple missions ahead of you, like not that much either. So, but I've like hearing people on the internet and like people in our Discord and stuff saying that they're like done with the game and already platinumed it. And I'm like,
so many people,
how like so many people are done with this game. And granted, it is like a pretty tight game. Like it doesn't take a lot of time to finish, but still, like I'm an adult with kids and a job. Like how do you guys get that done so fast? Zane on our podcast, one of our co-hosts, is already platinumed it as well, but he is an adult with no kids and no no family. So when he's not at work, that's what he's been doing. So that's fair. You know, like if that's you, then okay, that's how you finish the games. And I'm a little jealous. But
same.
But it's really good so far, dude. I absolutely loved the first game and Miles Morales. So, and I'm like, I don't know if you can see much. I've got Spider-Man, everything back here. This one, I mentioned this a few times on the podcast, but this is my favorite, like, possession. It's a actual movie theater poster from Spider-Man 3.
Dude.
And not the greatest movie ever, but that might be my favorite poster of all time. Like it's so awesome. I fight with people on a daily basis about what the worst Spider-Man movie is. So, you know, it's not 2. Spider-Man 3. Yeah, it's Amazing Spider-Man 2. You're right. So anyways, it's really good so far. Miles Morales was fantastic. Like I love how they integrated, like, you know, the 2 Spider-Man system so far. Cool. And like, it's so cool, dude. Like if you're just swinging around doing nothing, you can just switch to the other Spider-Man anytime you want. It's amazing. Like as long as you're not in the middle of a big, you know, long cutscene mission type of thing. And yeah, I just love that part of it. It's so stinking good. So, and Venom is one of my favorite like characters as well. So, and I haven't even gotten to anything Venom's yet. So I'm anticipating this game to be my favorite game of the year for sure. Yeah. Maybe even crack like my top 5 games all time. Cause so far it's a 6 out of 6 and I'm totally biased. So, you know, you don't have to listen to that, but that's what I think of it so far.
I'm the same way too. Like I thought the first game was perfect. And my only complaint about Miles is that it was too short, which it was like kind of like a surprise thing. They're like, oh, there's a Miles Morales game that's continuing on the Spider-Man stuff that comes out next month. You know, it was kind of such like a, whoa, okay, cool. So I wasn't even mad about that, you know, but yeah, like even the opening scene, the stuff with Sandman, I'm like, how is this? Gosh. Like, how am I playing this right now? That's like all I thought. I was like, how is this real? Like, what the fuck?
And like to have that as your opening like scene was just like, yeah, this is awesome. This is awesome. I don't know how else to feel about this. This is just incredible.
And that Black Cat mission, I did not see that coming. I was like, what?
Me neither. What is happening right now?
Like, what is this? This is wild. Like I even tried to explain that to my wife and she's like, whatever, cool.
I feel like that's what my wife says. Like anytime I try to explain any nerd stuff to her, she's just like, okay, cool. I don't understand anything that you just said, but great.
Yeah.
Glad you're excited about it.
Yeah, it's cool because she watches like a lot of the Marvel stuff with me, and she's been watching Gen V with me, which has been really
Oh,
cool. She's like
nice.
super
Yeah.
into Gen V, which I'm like
Yeah.
stoked about because that show is fucking incredible.
So good.
But yeah, it's most of the time she's like, you like me trying to talk to Loki with her. That's like not gonna happen. She's like, I don't even know what's going on in the show anymore. And I'm like, that's fair.
My wife gave up on the MCU basically after Endgame. Like, we'll still go out to all the like big premieres together. She likes watching the movies with me and stuff,
Yeah.
but she has not watched any Disney Plus show, has not really had any interest in any of that, which, like, you know,
Fair.
that's fair because there's been so much content that has come out in the past like 3 years that it's just like, whew, all right. Got to take a breather here. For us nerds, it's like, yes, this is the best thing ever. But for the casual audience, it's like, wow, that's a lot of stuff I got to watch.
Yeah, there's stuff that she's definitely skipped. And there's stuff that I've been like, you should really watch the show, you'd like it. And then we've started like Miss Marvel. I was like, you would like Miss Marvel. And she watched and she liked it. And then we just fell off. And even She-Hulk, she watched most of She-Hulk and thought it was fine. Thought it was like fun and stuff like that. And Secret Invasion she didn't even watch, which like that fucking matters anyway. She's like kind of been mostly she's been like in the room as I'm watching Loki more than really watching Loki, because even I was like, you need to watch the season finale of Loki season 1, it's so important. And she's like, I don't even know what just happened in there. Like, what?
I've watched a couple episodes of Loki with my wife in the room, and she starts watching and I'm like, oh, do you like this? And she's like, well, I really like Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston. And I was like, okay, that's totally fair. Like, those guys are amazing in this show. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there too. I think she loves going to watch the movies. It's interesting. I'm now because I'm at the point where I get to see movies early because I'm seeing the Marvels.
That's amazing.
Next Tuesday, and she's not going. So I'm like wondering if I'm going to see it again with her, or she does not like Captain Marvel. She like really does not like that movie at all. It's probably like her least favorite MCU movie, mostly because she was like disappointed. It's supposed to be the first female-led MCU movie, and it let her down.
Totally fair.
Totally fair. I get it. It's near the bottom of my list too. I don't hate it, but it's down there.
You know, I've had this conversation so many times. Like, the bottom of my list, which we've talked about, that we've done a list before at some point. I don't remember what episode, but like I think the Incredible Hulk was like my bottom one, or no, maybe it was Thor: Dark World. I think it was Thor: Dark World, but I still rate that like a 3.5. Like, it's not like I don't hate any of the MCU. Like, it's all like fun, and I will watch all of it. But like, you know, it's everybody is like, oh, it's the worst movie. I was like, you have not watched a lot of bad movies if you think anything in the MCU is bad. Like, there are way worse movies out there than anything in the MCU, man. Just watch more movies.
Yeah, that I say the same exact thing. I was like, you need to watch more movies because I've seen some bad movies. At least these movies, for the most part, are very well made, pretty well acted for the most part, you know, and have like fun. Like, at least they're fun. The only thing
if you don't like them, that's totally fine. But like, you have to like at least acknowledge that this is a well-made movie.
Yeah, the only one that I will say that I probably dislike fully has been Secret Invasion. That's like the first. I was like, I've been disappointed by this. That's the only
disappointing in like big capital letters. Like, disappointing is a good word to sum up that series for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure anyone who's listened to anything I've done, I've said it many times, so people probably get it at this point. I was very disappointed by it.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something that I've been watching as well, is Gen V. I've definitely been loving this series, and I kind of was like, you know, they started promoting this at the beginning of the year, and I was kind of like, sometimes these spin-offs of these shows just don't really turn out great. So I was kind of like, you know, apprehensive, still like cautiously optimistic, because I love The Boys. I think The Boys is incredible. One of the best shows we've gotten in a while. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to watch this. Definitely going to, you know, give this a proper shot. And it has exceeded my expectations. I think it's been phenomenal. Yeah. So, but yeah, is the finale, I'm thinking about it, is the finale this week?
Tonight? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
As we're recording, yeah.
It's crazy. I probably won't get this episode out tonight, but
right.
For those of you guys who are listening, we're excited to watch the finale tonight. So there you go. It's going to be amazing. I've been, all the acting is phenomenal. I love that they are in that universe and it feels like the boys, but they didn't push any like characters or, you know, stuff from the boys into this show like forcefully, you know, like everything feels very natural in this show. So that's the one thing that I'm like very appreciative of this show. It's, man, if you guys like the boys at all, you have to watch Gen Z or Gen Z. How about with youth groups? I'd probably say Gen Z a lot, but Gen V, it is phenomenal.
It's so crazy because I was watching Sabrina and didn't realize that Maria is in Sabrina. She's like one of the main characters.
Really? That is interesting. Okay.
I knew that Andre is like the cousin to Sabrina in the show.
Okay.
And I'm like,
wow. So there's a few different characters.
Because he's incredible. But I didn't realize like one of her best friends in the show is Marie. I was like,
wow,
that's her. I was like, what? That's her. I didn't even realize. She looks a little bit younger, and in the beginning seasons of Sabrina, she wore glasses, and it was like the old comedies like movie trope where they took off the glasses and they look different. But it kind of worked. And I was like, oh wow, that's the same girl. I had to look it up just to make sure. And I was like, I think that's Marie from Gen V. But it is. But yeah, they took two of the main characters from Sabrina. They must have. I don't know if there's like some crossover in the teams or something.
Maybe, yeah.
But I was like, huh, interesting. Like interesting that they brought two of the people over from there. But yeah. The show's incredible.
That's cool.
I think it's redefined what spin-offs can be for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, and like with the storylines that they've got, I know I've heard a lot of speculation and stuff about how Gen V is going to tie into the next season of The Boys. Like I've heard some people say that it will like basically the boys will pick up from Gen V where it leads off. I'm not like they would have to do something big. Well, I'm assuming they will do something big at the end of this finale episode to kind of push that. But I mean, either way, this show deserves more seasons, and I'm fully on board with, you know, anything that the boys universe does at this point. So definitely worth watching if you haven't dove into that one yet. All right, one more thing that I wanted to. Oh wait, we're going to talk about Loki a little bit later. We're going to review those, so I'm going to hold off on that. But the one thing that I wanted to ask you about, because I know you've gotten a little bit of a sneak peek at, is Invincible season 2. So we are. I think when did Invincible come out? Was that 2021? Is that 2 years ago now?
It's been 2 or 3 years. It's been a while.
We always do every year. We do a end of the year show and we like rank our top movie and TV show. Invincible won hands down. Whatever year that came out, like all across the board, all of the Infinity Bros loved Invincible, and it won that year. I think it was 2021. I don't think it was last year. So yeah, we all love Invincible. Very excited for season 2, which also is dropping tonight. Am I correct?
I think at midnight Pacific time.
So very excited about that. I heard you got a little sneak peek. So can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, I can give like my non-spoiler thoughts for sure. Well, I guess by the time it comes out, the first episode will be out, but I'm not gonna.
That's probably true. I'm not gonna. Yeah. Non-spoiler thoughts is great. Yeah. We'd love that.
It's the way it just continues everything from season 1 is so perfect because the events of the finale weigh so heavily over. I've seen the first part of season 2. I believe it's 4 or 5 episodes. I don't remember. But it just, everything is so impacted on that. You see Mark really struggle with not wanting to be Omni-Man. You see Debbie really struggle with half of her life being a fucking lie to her and everything else. Like it takes everything you love about Invincible and cranks up to 11. Like if you love the first season, you're going to love where they're going. And they really are. It's a big setup, this whole first half, which makes sense why they split it into 2 parts. But it's such a massive setup and they're setting up so much stuff and it goes in directions like I swear to God you're not expecting, especially if you haven't read the comics, which I haven't read, but I read pretty much the comics that covered season 1 after season 1 aired for the most part. And I have not read. I decided not to read ahead so I can be totally surprised when I watch the show.
That's
Basically.
awesome. Yeah, the Invincible comics are phenomenal. If you are a comic book fan and you haven't read those, you need to get into those because they are absolutely phenomenal.
Very close to the show. They just change a
Yeah.
few things up from the show to the comics and kind of just elevate things in ways that because Robert Kirkman, who made the comic, is very involved with the show. So he's
awesome.
even went on to say like, hey, this is my chance to like make things better, really look at things and switch things up. But it is awesome. And I can't wait to see how this season kind of culminates. And I'm very stoked to see that season 3 is, pretty close, ready to go. So we're not gonna have to wait years for the next season. Which
Okay, that's amazing.
Which is good. But if you're an Invincible fan, you're gonna be stoked that Invincible's back for sure.
So how would you rate the 4 to 5? You said 4 or 5 episodes. You said?
Yeah, it's four or 5 episodes.
Okay.
I would give it.
What would you rate that right now?
Like a 5.5 or a 6, like close to it. It is so good. Like I don't know. Like it's like the emotion is higher, the stakes are higher, the action is just as brutal. It just takes everything you loved and just keeps elevating it. So
kicked it up a notch.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Definitely looking forward to that. By the time this episode airs, it probably will be available to watch the season premiere. So definitely check that out. But I think we are ready to get into our Loki review. Sean, are you ready for this?
I am so ready.
So for those of you guys who have not seen episodes 3 and 4 of Loki, this is your official spoiler warning. We are going to be spoiling that and all of the previous episodes. Not going to get into episode 5 or 6, which drops tonight and will be out when this episode drops. Is it 5 tonight?
5 is tonight.
5 tonight. Yes, 5, because finale will be next week, which is bonkers that we're getting to the finale already. I cannot believe that. But anyways, episode 5 will not be reviewed. So episode 3 and 4 are the ones we're talking about today. But here's the official spoiler warning.
This is...
Prepare yourself.
An Infinity Bros.
Prepare yourself.
Spoiler. Warning.
All right, Loki, I want to get kind of your background thoughts first. What did you think of season 1 and then kind of like the hype leading into season 2?
So season 1, easily my favorite MCU series. And I think season 2 has only elevated season 1 too. Like retroactively, it has made it even better. And I think it's probably somewhere near the top of my MCU rankings. At least top 10 for sure. I just think it's so well done. It's so well written. They do a thing where they totally change the Marvel formula where the finale isn't some big CGI fight. It's literally a conversation. And I love that. That's been my favorite thing about phase 4 and 5 is they've taken time to really slow things down and have these like character conversations. And I think this show does it the best of any of them. And I love that season 2 has only gone more into that. But like we talked about time travel stuff. I love time travel stuff. I love multiverse stuff. So once you do that and you do it well, you have me. I'm in. And it's like a sci-fi weird time travel show. Like that's like my favorite genre. So the fact they can do that in the MCU and Tom Hiddleston as Loki is just, dude, one of the best. He's got it.
Phenomenal.
Like, he has to be. You're going to hear me talk about this a lot. He has to be one of the leads of the Avengers movies. Has to be.
That would be wild.
He has to be. No one makes more sense than him.
Yeah. At this point, like he's like the guy that's remaining from like the OG, MCU. I even mentioned like in one of our previous Loki reviews, I was like, hey, if Mobius, Loki, and OB become our new MCU Trinity, then so be it. Like, I'm totally on board. If those guys are the center of the MCU moving forward, I would absolutely love it.
When I listened to that in that episode, I was like, yes.
Those guys are just so stinking good together. Yeah. So diving into season 2, obviously, we reviewed episodes 1 and 2. I believe it was on episode 181 of the Infinity Bros podcast. So you can go back and listen to that. But what did you think of those first couple episodes of Loki?
the first episode I loved. It probably one of my favorite episodes until probably episode 4 of Marvel TV. It's just like the just like the panic of it all. And this show has given us something the MCU I think has been lacking in Phase 4 and Phase 5, which some of it is kind of warranted, some of it I think isn't. But it has clear stakes, clear ramifications, and that's so needed. Like even in like Multiverses of Madness, for example, all of this crazy shit happens, but it doesn't matter because I have it in another universe. Now, will I think that stuff will matter later on? Probably, but within the movie, you don't feel like it matters, and I think that's a big problem of that movie. But within this, like everything, like Kang feels so overlooming without even really being in it. Like he feels like such a threat to everything.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I love the pace of it. So episode 1 I thought was perfect. Episode 2, kind of agreeing with a lot of what you guys said. I feel like there just needed to be like one scene in the beginning kind of explaining why they're going to get Brad. And I kind of wish they knew about Doc's bombing the stuff beforehand. So it meant it would have made the bombing feel more important. Because the way like Hunter B-15 really exemplified like her pain in it, like they really did that super well. But I think it just would have amplified that acting if we knew the stakes a little bit sooner. That was my only qualm with this whole series so far is that the pacing in episode 2 was a little weird. But I can overlook it because of what came in episode 3.
Right. Like, so you mentioned that. I mean, we talked about that before, but like we don't even find out that she's bombing the timelines until
right before.
Right before it happens, and we're all like, oh, okay, all right, I guess she's bombing the timelines then. But it's just like, it's kind of like, oh, this is an interesting way to do things. And I guess I don't necessarily, I'm not in the filmmaking industry, so like, however they determined all this happened, maybe they're just trying to shake things up and like throw people off of the the MCU formula type of thing. But I totally agree. It did feel kind of like funky just in like the pacing, and it's just like, oh, okay, all right. so much emphasis, even going on into 3 and 4, so much emphasis on Brad, which literally shows up in a clip in the first episode, and you're like, oh, now this guy's important. Okay. Cool. Like, great. Just would have been nice to get maybe a little bit more context into that, but all right, this guy's important now. So, but anyways, I think that was it was a good building episode, but definitely probably didn't measure quite up to episode 1 for sure. But leading into episode 3. So again, generally how we do things on the Infinity Bros podcast is we talk about the characters, and the first thing I want to lead out with, what we can kind of group them together, is Mobius and Loki, Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston. And they just are I feel like they're the reason why this show works. Like, these guys just are phenomenal actors. And through, again, first couple episodes as well, their relationship and how that's all developing, just chef's kiss. Like, it's just so stinking good. I could watch those guys in like a buddy cop show, just go into a different like top period in time, like every episode. Oh, that would be
actually
awesome.
If there was a murder mystery TV show and it was just them solving it, please.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, that's a great callback to that Infinity Gauntlet question. That would be perfect. That would be amazing. But I mean, and this start of episode 3 almost feels like that buddy cop, like just go back to a different time period. They go back to 1893 or something, or 1863 or something like that. No, it's 93, because that's when Kang is grown up. Or sorry, Victor Timely, who we'll get into a little bit. But like, it was just so cool going back into the 1893 Chicago. Everybody's in the old timey costumes. You go into the theme park, and the time period thing was perfect. They knocked that out of the park. And it was just, this was a really fun episode. And we get into Victor Timely, who they see, doing his show. And this also, if you guys remember, rewind back to Quantumania, the post-credit scene is a little clip from Loki seeing Victor Timely, and he's like, that's him. And you just like, this is Tom Hiddleston just peak Tom Hiddleston, you see the fear in his eyes, and like, I'm more scared of Victor Timely in that moment than I was almost all of Quantumania with Kang.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because Loki or Tom Hiddleston sells it. He's just like, that dude is terrifying. And that was such a cool moment. I love that they, obviously they probably just took that clip and used that for the Quantumania post-credit scene, but such a cool callback. I absolutely love that part of it.
Yeah, it was so cool. Like you said, their dynamic is so perfect. It's so much fun. They work so well together. And Tom Hiddleston, his acting and the way he treats this character is so incredible. He's like, him and Rocket are probably like the coolest characters in the MCU right now. Just like the way they've been handled and written. And I love how he brings up and like reminds us that this is not the Loki we lost in Infinity War. This is the Loki that was trying to take over New York like a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that he brings up even the shit he did that was evil.
Yeah,
he's like, that was me being angry at my family. And I'm like, dude, how are you making the shit that's so diabolical just feel so relatable? Like, you're a fucking god. And I love you so much. It's so insane how they do this. Like, they took all the great character building they did within the normal MCU timeline in phases 1 through 3, and they just made it better. You know, I heard someone talk about this thing where they talk about like Loki's glorious purpose, and they were talking about how season 1, how they realized that the glorious part was what he was really after, and now it's him finding his purpose. And I thought that was so well said.
Interesting. Yeah,
I was like, damn,
that's a cool perspective.
That's so good. And I love the conversations they have, because the conversations they have with it's like with him with Sylvie, him with Mobius, it's like no one's really wrong in the conversation. It's two like very good viewpoints that you can see both sides, and that's what makes the show so interesting, is that you're like, no one's really wrong here.
Right.
Exactly. And I love that kind of stuff.
Yep. Well, and it goes back to the finale of season 1, where like, I mean, He Who Remains gives them that option. Like, hey, you can kill me and you guys will have to figure it out, or you can leave it and just keep it going the way it's going. And like, you look at those two options and you're like, I don't think there's a wrong option here. But also, there's not really a right option. So it's like, oh, man, okay. So obviously, Sylvie chooses the kill He Who Remains, and here we are in season 2. So, but yeah, you're totally right. Like, that's what makes this season interesting, is that there's no clear right or wrong, unless we're talking about Ravonna, which we'll get to in a few minutes here. But yeah, like Sylvie and Loki are kind of at odds, even though their goal is pretty much the same.
Yes.
They just have different ideas of making it happen. So yeah, that's what makes this season so interesting. We talked about Ki Hui Kwan as OB starting in, which I think he shines in that first episode so much. Like, I love him and his character, and he takes on a little bit more of a minor role in these later episodes, but he is perfect, and he pairs with Casey and they're just like tinkering, like messing around, doing all these things, but he's kind of in the background, just like, kind of like figuring out what the next steps are. But I think he is just a perfect addition to the MCU.
So like, good, dude.
Just positivity just like radiates out of him every time I'm watching him. It's so good.
Even him saying we're all gonna die is like somehow
I know, it's like, not even like
endearing.
It's exactly. He says it in like a positive way somehow, and you're like, wow, I don't know how he does that, but it's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's episode 2 when they bring that tempad that Brad messed with. And then he asks, and it's not in like a mean way or anything. He's just like, "Do you think this is more important than solving the temporal loom?" And they're like, "Yeah, you're right." But he says it in such a way that's like, it's not like disarming or mean or anything. Like, it's such a genuine response.
Yeah,
like only he can bring that type of energy to this.
Yeah, only he can do that. And one of my favorite parts so far of this whole season is that first scene when they meet him, and Loki is doing the time slipping. He says, "Oh, I've never seen you before." Time slips back, like, I think he mentions it's like 400 years or something like that. And then he's like, "Oh yeah," and they meet, and Loki has him make that, and then he time slips back again, and then he's like, Oh yeah, I remember now. Like that
So
was just,
good.
oh, it was so perfect, and he played that part so well. Again, he's such an endearing person that
Yes.
character that he plays is just phenomenal. I
Yeah.
love it so much. So looking forward to seeing a lot more of him in the MCU, even if he is kind of relegated to like being a Loki character. I'm give me everything. I love that guy.
Yes. I love the TVA. Like I really do. I really do.
Oh man, so good. All right, so let's jump a little bit to Victor Timely. So we haven't seen Jonathan Majors really at all up until this. I mean, we saw him as He Who Remains in the finale of season 1, and this season we haven't seen him because obviously he died.
Yep.
And this new variant, Victor Timely, they pick up in episode 3, and he is in a large majority of episodes 3 and 4.
Yep.
And say what you want about Jonathan Majors, the dude kills this role. Like he
So
is doing such a phenomenal job as Victor Timely and He Who Remains. Like last season, that was one of the best parts of that finale. It was that how he played He Who Remains. Like it was just so stinking good.
yeah,
And
so good.
he picks it up and he's playing a completely different version of Kang in this. And man, I'm so stoked to see how many different like personalities of Kang or different multiverse characters of Kang that we're going to see, because I'm excited to see how he comes up with each of these different variants. Like he did such a great job, plays like kind of like an eccentric, inventor from the 1890s, and he nails it. Like it's so good.
Yeah, I love that he's kind of like a con man, and he kind of like it makes sense that he's a con man because he's a black inventor in the
Yeah.
1800s. Like it
Right.
makes so much sense, and I love how they didn't shy away from that kind of stuff too, or how they were like, oh yeah, of course he would be treated like this. Like it makes perfect sense. I
Right.
really love they did that, and I love you were talking about like this aesthetic I love how like even the Marvel fanfare was like that aesthetic.
Oh
Like
yeah, like the piano, like
yeah,
oh, that was so
and
good.
and they even played with like some of the hijinks is like very like Three Stooges almost. Like I love.
Yeah,
I can see
right.
some people thinking it was goofy, but like it fit with the vibe so much
It
that I
fits so
really
well.
liked it.
Like
Yeah,
if they keep up that like perfect fit for that time period and they go to a bunch of different ones, obviously we only have episodes 5 and 6 left
yeah,
in this season of Loki, so I don't really have time for that. But like again, a buddy cop show with Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston where they just go to different time periods. Oh man, I would watch that so hard.
Also, what a wild Easter egg of having Balder the Brave in episode 3.
Yeah, right? That was that was awesome.
I was
And
like,
I love
whoa.
Loki's like little side comments too. He's like, I'm taller than that. Like Balder's not that big. I
Yeah,
think he said something like that. It's just like he's still like we see him becoming softer,
yeah.
as the season goes on, but he's still got that Loki
He's got that.
arrogance
Yeah,
to him, which Tom Hiddleston plays that so well.
yeah.
So that
It's been
was that
cool
was
because
really
like you've
fun.
seen the character evolve, but you've seen him kind of go back to that villainous nature in order to get things done.
Yeah,
But it's cool to see him still have that because
right.
if he's going to be one of the people that are going up against like the actual Kang or the Council of Kangs, like we need that version of Loki
Right.
still.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like it is really interesting to like, back in season 1, he's the Loki of old, like the
Yeah.
2012 Avengers Loki. And it's cool to, see him evolving. But then during that scene where he's interrogating Brad, he kind of like you see him kind of slip back into that like villainous, like, and you're
Oh yeah.
totally right. Like they're going to need that to face down Victor, or as we'll see in at the end of episode 2, is not Victor Timely anymore. Kang and whatever variant is going to come next. But it's just, man, they do such a fantastic job. Loki or Tom Hiddleston as Loki going playing both of
Yeah.
those characters, like the kind of the softer. He like kind of understands now what Thor has been going through. Like
Right.
like there's such a sharp contrast from 2012 villain Loki and then going to like Infinity War Endgame Loki. Well, Infinity War Loki, since he basically is not an Endgame at all.
Yeah.
But just like he's softened by that point, and now we're seeing it kind of happen again in a different route.
way.
Yeah, just it's phenomenal. And that, like, that going back to what we were talking about before, where Tom Hiddleston is like the OG guy from the original, phase one. Like, he's the guy that still remains. And, we still do have Chris Hemsworth as Thor still, but
Right.
Tom Hiddleston just is knocking it out of the park with this series. So incredible. And we get the okay, so we've talked about most of the characters in episode 3. Ravonna, Renslayer, and Miss Minutes are also back there. This was the wildest part of episode 3, dude. These guys hunting down Victor Timely, and I mean, I'm just gonna skip ahead to the obvious part. Miss Minutes, like, being in love with Victor Timely. All of us are like, oh my, okay, well, you kind of got the sense that she was in love with him, but I did not expect it to come out like that in the creepiest way possible. That was a shock to us all.
Oh, 100%. It's so funny because even that, and then like the jump scare in the season finale of season 1, it's like she has some of the most like wildly horrific MCU moments.
Yeah, right. Like, and see, episode 4 plays into it so much, like the horror kind of like creepy aspect of this show. It just, Miss Minutes has always been a creepy character from day one.
Yeah,
but this just confirms everything that we've always thought about her. And she just goes, like, it's so crazy because, like, she's been there from like the beginning with Kang, or He Who Remains, right? So she knows that Victor Timely is not him, or is soon to become somewhat a version of him, but he's obviously not there yet. But she just full on goes for it, and you're just like, oh my.
It is so wild. And even there's one thing I wanted to bring up is that there's like a big like time travel theory called the bootstrap paradox, and they literally do that in this episode. They kind of trick you with it in a way, which I kind of actually respected, like totally respected, because they it's a whole thing where the time traveler travels back in time, delivers a book of how to create a time machine, and then they use the time machine to go deliver the book to close the time loop. And I was like, damn, they fucking did the thing. I was like,
they did it.
They mess with you. It's like the big thing you need to like pay attention to is once they go into the future where Victor Timely is older, it says branch timeline, and when they go to deliver the book, it says sacred timeline. So it's like that moment in time created a variant of, because I still have a theory that Victor Timely is He Who Remains. I don't know if it's this branch version or if it's
And the crazy thing about the branch timelines is they can almost do anything they want with that. Like, they can make anything that we've seen previously in the MCU. They could make any of that in a branch timeline. They could make anything that we've seen in Loki a branch timeline. Like, that's like, that was messing with my head through the first 2 episodes, because, like, when Loki comes back to the TVA and he's like in the future or the past, I think he's in the past of the TVA or whatever, and then he like crashes into the TVA, and then he goes to the future, and it's like cracked, like the floor is like cracked, and I'm like, something wasn't adding up for me there. I was like, are these like potentially different multiverses that he's going to instead of time, like instead of like times in the TVA? And I think at this point that would be too much to explain. So it definitely is like time that he's going back and forth in the TVA. Plus, we got the kind of the resolution of the end of episode 2 where Loki again completes the time loop, kind of like you're talking about, by pruning himself. So he could, fix the timeline, time slipping or whatever. It's like they're doing a pretty good job at, like, if not following those rules, kind of making their own rules and like sticking to their own, time rules. So it's been very interesting to see where they roll with that.
Yeah, I kind of love it because it's like a weird thing. It goes back to like episode 1 where he's talking with Obi, and then Obi slightly remembers these things, because it kind of plays with like the Back to the Future time travel logic, but since
Yeah.
they've already introduced like multiversal time branching logic, since he's being pushed through time within the timeline, he can affect that said timeline because he
Right.
ends up. It's like all. It's kind of like the end game rules where they should have created branches, but the
Right.
TVA
But
was
they were
part of their
meant to
set
do that.
plan, so
Right.
it was all meant to happen, which is
Yeah.
like a totally whole nother thing. Is that some of these episodes, especially like episode 1 and episode 4, it seems like there's something like looming over and like watching the events of what's happening, and especially after you see what happens to Victor Timely at the end of episode 4, and Miss Min is saying like you'll never be him and shit like that.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry, I swear. Is that I
You'll
feel like
never
all
be
of this
him.
is still meant to happen. Like I
Yeah.
feel like this is all part of He Who Remains plan still, and
Yeah.
we're all still in a loop.
Well,
Like
and
that's
okay,
the
so
craziest part.
you mentioned that like that created like going back, giving Victor Timely the book that created a branch, right? But
Right.
like in the TVA, they're like separate, so like they're not
Right.
really in a. They can't like branch in the
Right.
TVA. As like according to the rules that have kind of
Right.
been established so far, you can't really branch in the TVA. So that I find just like fascinating. I'm like, okay, so all these branches are being created, but while they're in the TVA, all the stuff they're doing is like the one timeline or whatever, right? Like, yeah, exactly. So Loki going back and pruning himself, that was like, oh man, okay, all right. I see where we're going here. This is very interesting, and I'm very excited to see where it leads. Last couple episodes here. So okay,
especially with the ending of episode 4, like
yeah, right. Okay, so let's get into episode 4 a little bit. We talked a little bit about Ravonna and Miss Minutes, but like they cranked it up not even a notch. Like they just let the handle fly and just threw it up when Ravonna and Miss Minutes literally kill a bunch of, TVA agents that refused to go with her. This was a mind-blowing moment because up until this point, nobody has straight up died in this show. They get pruned.
True.
And they go back to, the whatever, the multiverse that Loki, went in at the end of time.
Oh, yeah, the void.
And they die in that multiverse. But like when they get pruned, you're not really killing them. You're just sending them to that multiverse to get killed.
Yeah.
So like up until this point, nobody's really like died, and it's all pretty PG. Like even when you get pruned, it's like, oh, okay, well, they got pruned. Like, all right, move on to the next thing. She crushes a group of people with this to death. You hear squelching sounds when this is happening, and Miss Minutes is staring on there with a smile. And this was just, I like my mouth was wide open during this scene. I was like, I can't believe they just did this. Wow.
Psycho.
That was, oh my gosh.
Crazy.
I cannot believe they did that in this show. And honestly, it kicked it up a notch. Like the stakes are already high, but like Ravonna is willing to murder people, not prune them, which she's been doing this whole time.
Right.
She's willing to straight up murder people to get what she wants. So that was like, oh my gosh.
I think it shows why that she was the leader of the army for Kang to take
absolutely
over the TVA,
yeah absolutely. It definitely gives a little bit of background on her. So interesting too. Like, I mean, going back to, I think she found that out in episode 3 that she didn't know anything about that. Like she was the leader of He Who Remains army, and she finds that out and she's like, oh wow, okay. But kind of going through that whole revelation of Victor Timely is a variant,
right?
So he's not really He Who Remains. And then she and Miss Minutes are like, you know what? Well, granted, first Miss Minutes like makes her move and gets shut down by Victor Timely after Miss Minutes realizes that she's not going to make it with Victor Timely. Then they come up with the plan to take over the TVA by themselves.
Insane.
But what a wild turn of events with the end of that episode, like Ravonna and Miss Minutes being sent to the end of time and coming back, taking out that group of TVA agents. And then at the end of this episode, Victor Timely gets spaghettied.
did not see that. I was my jaw hit the floor.
Yeah,
I was like,
same, dude.
what? Because you're like, what happens now?
Yeah, here we are thinking like Victor Timely is this big important and he's going to play a huge role in the last part of the season, and boom, dead. Like, and not just any death. This is a brutal like
Insane.
Scarlet Witch Spaghetti's John Krasinski, Reed Richards death. Like, this was wild. Oh my gosh. And it's so funny too, because like I thought about when that happened, I just sat in shock for a minute. And then after I was done being in shock, I was like, Loki was the one that was gonna go out there. And Victor Timely straight up was like, no, I'll do it. Just imagine.
Loki
goes out and gets spaghettied. And we're all sitting here watching 2 more episodes of Loki with, only variants of Loki. Oh my gosh.
It is so crazy. I literally couldn't believe it. And then the loom explodes and you're like, what? Like, what do you mean? They lost, dude.
Right. Such a wild ending. Okay, so I mean, this all comes back to what we were talking about before. This is all wild speculation from us from this point on. What happens next? Is the timeline reset? Is there a sacred timeline? That's it? Like, what are we going to find out when it goes from white to something? What is next?
It's so interesting because they dropped that, like, the last 2 episode trailer. And I think episode 5 is going to kind of be like a Groundhog's Day episode where he plays that he time slips and that's how he gets out of it. And he plays it over and over. Like, they fail like a million times over again until they finally get it right. I think it's going to be that. Yeah. And I think that could be really fun, especially within this world, like a nice Groundhog Day type of thing. Yeah. Could be really cool.
That would be awesome.
But the very interesting thing is that he visits like the variants of his TVA friends on their respective timelines. Like, Mobius is a jet ski salesman, and it seems like B-15 is like a physician of some sort. It looks like Casey's in like a prison, and there's an OB looks like he's like a professor or something. And there's this very interesting scene that has all of the variant versions, like not the TVA versions, with Loki and Sylvie, and they're in this like building that looks like it might be showing like the beginning of the TVA, because it looks like OB's like his department, but without all the stuff in it.
Interesting.
So I'm like very interesting to see how this like ends and how this plays into a factor. I do think kind of like season 1, not like a repeat of it, but it's fully going to like launch. This is going to be like a big launching point to like Secret Wars and King Dynasty. And because even like going back to like the Quantumanium post-credit scene where they say the Forbidden One is dead. In the movie, you're thinking about like, oh, they're talking about the Kang that we just saw within the movie. But I think they were talking about He Who Remains and Sylvie killing He Who Remains. Like, that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, that does. Right.
And they're like kind of messing with you, especially with like, the Victor Timely tag being after that. Like, it makes sense that, that would be the case. So I feel like it's finally going to like set the multiverse in motion, which it kind of already did, obviously, with like allowing things like No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness and What If to happen after the whole Loki thing, because now everything's all wide open. But I don't know. It's hard because they could do a crazy thing and just reset everything, but I just don't think they're going to do that. And especially seeing this footage, it seems like no. And I don't think it like undermines anything that happens. It just depends how it ends. And I know like, the writer said like these are crazier than the last, which of course the writer's going to say that, but I kind of believe them with how this season has gone. The season has been,
you almost have to, right? Yeah. Like, and I want to be a little careful because we made that mistake with WandaVision of like, hey, this is better. It's getting better. It has to be better, like like ramping up or whatever. But like, I don't know how you can, there's 2 episodes left. I don't know how you can wrap this up satisfactorily without like ramping up each of those episodes a little bit. And I do think it will end on a pretty decent cliffhanger, because we have so much to look forward to in the MCU as far as like, how are we connecting all the stuff that we've gotten in phase 4, in phase 5, like how are we going to wrap all this stuff together to launch to Secret Wars? So I do think there's a little bit of a launch point at
Right.
the end of this. Just don't really know how that's going to happen.
Me either. Like I don't know. Like it's so hard to kind of predict because
Right.
this show has been very unpredictable. Like even in season 1,
Yeah.
like a lot of people were hoping it was pointing to Kang, and then when he actually showed up at the end, like or a version of Kang, everyone was like,
Right.
"Oh shit, he's here!" Sick,
Yeah.
But like no one saw that coming because I think it was kind of like the WandaVision thing where they're like, "There's no way he's going to be at the end,"
Right.
And then he was.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
So I do think too it is going to be a launching point again, but I just don't know how.
Right.
It's interesting with that article when they said that it's going to be hard for them to continue with Jonathan Majors after the finale. So I'm very interested to see what that means. But I don't know.
I'm really interested because like at this point, like, okay, cut out anything with Jonathan Majors' like personal life.
Right.
Like the dude is a phenomenal actor. Incredible. And if you recast or like go outside of him, I feel like there's too much built on him right now. It's not going to be the same impact that it was if he plays that character through Secret Wars. So now let's talk about his personal life just for a little tidbit. I mean, we've talked about on this podcast about how like, all this, he's definitely got like, from what it sounds like, a history of some shady stuff going on. We definitely don't want to like endorse any of that stuff, but at the same time, the civil case and the court case really has not proved anything about the current situation that he's in. Right. So, and I think Marvel jumped the gun with James Gunn, ironically, fired him and then realized, oh crap, like, yeah, he's a changed guy. Like, this was 10 plus years ago of dumb tweets from a young guy. And then DC hires him immediately. And then Marvel hires him back immediately. So Marvel is taking this slow. They're not going to fire Jonathan Majors until there's some kind of resolution on that. So take that for what you will. Like, as the MCU and the acting part of it goes, I think they would miss Majors for sure if they were to cut him out.
For sure. He is an unbelievable actor. Like, he's
absolutely
so good.
Well, and everything else he's good
Creed
too.
3?
Like, I mean, Creed 3. I mean, everything else that we've seen him in has been phenomenal as well. So
yeah, he's a great talent. Like, if he gets convicted, like he deserves to be punished for it. Obviously, that stuff is awful. But if he's innocent, then that's kind of been my whole philosophy with it, where it's like we don't really know what's going on. It's kind of same thing as Marvel. Wait and see what's actually real, and then go
exactly. Yeah, totally agree.
I mean, DC kept on Ezra Miller for a whole movie.
I know. So, like we harped on Ezra Miller for a long time because he's doing a lot of shady stuff too. So just it is what it is. It is like a conversation of like, can you separate the art from the artist? It's tough. Because like obviously I think it's valid to want to enjoy everything that Ezra Miller and I hesitate to put Ezra Miller and Jonathan Majors in the same sentence because Ezra Miller has done some really terrible things, so I don't really want to compare them. But
for sure,
like you still want to obviously be a fan of what they do and not necessarily their personal lives, like what they're involved in. So it's a tough conversation to have with people.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to try and I don't know. I liked The Flash. I know a lot of people didn't like The Flash. I thought they were great in The Flash. I thought they did a really good job acting in The Flash. And obviously, I after the fact, it was a point where it's like they already filmed it, whatever, put it out. Yeah. And then after the fact,
not only did they already film it, like, I mean, that thing went through so many cuts. Like from what I remember, I think the film was filmed like way back in like 2020 or something. Like it would have been a long time ago. So probably even before all the junk was coming out, you know.
Oh, it was way before.
It was way before that, right?
Before. I think the only things they did some reshoots after that stuff, which
Right.
is like,
Yeah.
you have to do it. Like, what do you want? Like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember like people we probably talked about it on the podcast too, about like how, I mean, they should just like recast Ezra Miller and like, you know, all that stuff. But like, obviously with how the movie turned out, probably would not have worked. But, you
They would
know,
have
there's
redone the
people
whole movie.
talking about that. Like,
Yeah.
hey, this movie hasn't been fully produced. Let's just recast him and like do, you know, all the stuff with that. But like, there was already so much money put into that movie that would have been
They would have to completely redo
ridiculous.
the movie. I mean, it's even the same with this season of Loki. Like, people are I think the court case, the arrest happened, and I think he did reshoots after that or something. And people kind of got up in arms about that. And it's like, what do you want them to do? And now seeing how big of a role he is in this role, there's no way that they would have had to reshoot the whole thing. They can't just reshoot it with a new actor.
Yeah,
like they would have had to redo like,
well, even like
entirely.
Yeah, even Quantum Mania too, dude. Like it wasn't the best movie in the world, but one of the best parts of that movie was Jonathan Majors.
Yeah.
Like he made that movie decent. Like I enjoyed it for what it was. If Jonathan Majors was not in that movie, it would have been a lot less enjoyable.
For sure.
Because he was just a great menacing villain. And I'm very excited to see more of him, of that one specifically, because we've gotten the He Who Remains and Victor Timely as well. But that like menacing Kang the Conqueror, that's the one I'm really excited to see.
I also think they're all three the same person.
They could be.
That's my theory.
They could be. We'll find out. Yeah, it could be like just different points of time.
Yeah, exactly. That's the cool thing about Kang, is that he can exist anywhere at any time.
Right.
I think that's, and the thing is, like, his goal isn't really bad. Like, in the grand scheme of things, like, yes, when you're pruning like a branch timeline, you're killing like, you know, trillions of people. Like that whole timeline bombing like literally killed like trillions of people. Like that's crazy. That's awful when you really think about it. But like, really what he's trying to do isn't really bad. You know, the way he goes about it.
Yeah,
a little murderous.
I mean, you could make that same argument for Thanos too. Like, I mean,
for sure.
It's not, his end goal is like not necessarily a bad thing, but like killing half the universe to do it, not maybe the best way to go about it.
And to think about it, he killed countless universes.
Oh yeah, right.
That's a lot of people.
Well, yeah, I mean, just like when we're pruning those branches too, like doing the bombing or whatever, like not just the, you know, 7 billion people on Earth, but you know how many people in the universe. Just like trying to wrap your mind around how many people he killed doing that. Just like,
it's
wow,
crazy.
That's pretty wild.
It's crazy. So I like commend Marvel for how they're handling that, and kind of how I know they haven't. People have been kind of bummed with how they've handled the multiverse, where I think it's mostly how they haven't dived into it enough. But I think even with variant type things, they've handled that super well. Like Gamora was handled super well, being a different version, like this version of Loki. They painted a picture very much where like this isn't the same character we're used to,
right?
And I love that they've done that, at least, you know, where it's not just like a scapegoat to be like, oh, that person didn't really die. It's like, no, that person did die. This is a different
person, right?
Yeah, which I love that. I love that they've differentiated that, because that's a big thing. Multiverse stuff can definitely, like, that happened in the CW verse like a million times. Like a different version came through, and they would acknowledge that they were dead, but you didn't really feel the weight of their death. And I feel like in the MCU they've done a good job with that.
Right. Yeah.
At least in my
it kind of just naturally has worked out well in that way, to where like we've grown attached to these characters and these actors playing these characters and stuff like that. And then as they're dying off, like we still feel the weight, because like, hey, we have watched so many movies with them, but then, oh, hey, now there's another version or variant that may or may not be a different actor or, you know, whatnot. So it's like, okay, we're getting into this multiverse thing. And just naturally, I feel like it's kind of been the way that we, even though, man, granted, on the Infinity Bros podcast, we hyped up Secret Invasion so much. Like that's like before Endgame, that's what we thought the next phases were leading up to is Secret Invasion, because like the Skrull stuff and Captain Marvel and blah, 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 and that just all ended with Secret Invasion. But
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like naturally though, they've done a pretty good job at, you know, introducing new things and for the future of the MCU. So
I agree for sure. That the Secret Invasion is just like wasted potential.
Just man, a lot of buildup for not much.
No, like I feel like if the show started with like the whole president speech, and they involved like some really big players, and it was really like involved Captain America, involved Captain Marvel, or Monica Rambeau, like it involved all these people that probably should have involved.
Yeah, that was the thing, man. Like we just like, I mean, we were like, Skrull watch, this person's a Skrull, this person's a Skrull, this person's a Skrull. And like, yeah, Rhodey was a Skrull, but like that was pretty much it. Like, why didn't you have so many more Skrulls?
Yeah. Even the Rhodey thing, when they ask the question, how long have you been here? And they don't answer it within the show. I'm like,
yeah.
What?
Like, I mean, it was pretty obvious that like the Skrull was, you know, Don Cheadle, and before that he wasn't a Skrull. That's when the switch happened, was when they recasted Don Cheadle.
If they did that, that's pretty wild.
That would be awesome.
Like, that is wild. You know, I saw people make that joke once it was revealed, because that was my guess. Because I was trying to think like it's got to be an OG player, but it can't be someone too big, you know, where it kind of like devalues some of the stuff that happened.
Yeah, but like, man, which again, the Secret Invasion run is phenomenal. If you haven't read that comic, definitely go check that out. That one is, they do such a good job with that, because like once Spider-Woman is revealed to be like the Skrull Queen, every superhero in that comic in the world is like, I can't trust anybody. I can't trust my best friend. They could have been a Skrull for the last 5 years. Like, you know, like it's so huge in the comic book run, and it just equated to nothing in the MCU, which was really disappointing.
Literally nothing.
Yeah. I mean, you get Rhodey, but like it was so self-contained within Secret Invasion, like the show, that it ultimately meant nothing in the scope of the MCU.
I think they can play with some cool things with Armor Wars with it, which is like a plus, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's really true. It. Like even Nick Fury as a whole, like all of his consequences were not felt at all. Like they're like, hey, I just started a war with the humans and every alien life form on Earth, and 2 of my best friends died. But see, I'm going back to space. Cool. Cool.
Yeah. just really.
All right.
Just ended with a.
I got my wife and I'm going back to space. See you guys later. Bye.
See ya. Checks out. I mean, I guess that does, like, character-wise, that makes sense with Nick Fury, but at the same time, you're totally right. Did not fulfill any consequences at all. It's just like, you know what? I just made a mess of things. I'm gonna go check out. See you guys.
It just blew my mind. Like, even when Marie Hill died in episode 1, I was like, okay, this show's got balls. Okay. I'm down with this. But then by the time like Talos died, I was like, I don't even care. And I should care.
Right.
No.
Because they just like built, both of them just died, and then it was like, all right, move on to the next thing. And like it had, again, no consequences. Like, okay, why did you kill off this character that we've grown to love through all of this if it's not going to mean anything?
Yeah, dude.
Like, come on. Like, if you're going to use that for the rest of the show, fine. But it just, like, after the second or third episode, I don't even know if Maria Hill's mentioned it again. Like, she's just gone.
I know.
It's just like, oh, okay.
See ya.
All right, then. It just doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, and then if you like compare it to like Black Widow and Iron Man, obviously way bigger roles in the MCU, but like you see them everywhere. Like you see them in like Miss Marvel, like they're like constantly mentioned, and you know, like that's like the best part of Hawkeye is kind of the whole Yelena and Clint thing of them kind of bonding over, you know, Black Widow over Natasha.
Yeah.
So it's like it's done well in other places. Like it doesn't mean it can't be done well everywhere else, you know.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, we digress. We have gotten off on the rails a little bit. back to Loki. Okay, I'm gonna have you go ahead and rate episodes 3 and 4 for me. What'd you think of 3 and 4?
Am I doing them together or separately?
Separately. Let's do them separately.
I think I give 3 like a 5, but I give 4 a 6. 4 was mind blowing. That episode, I love 3. There's nothing to take away from 3.
Yeah.
I think if I like ranked the episode orders, it'd probably be 4, 1, 3, 2. I think. Probably.
I think I'm with you. I think I would flip. Did you say 4, 1, 3, 2 or 2, 3? 2, 3?
3, 2.
3, 2. Yeah, I think I'm right with you. I think that's how I would
really
like
liked 3.
I loved 1.
3 was really
OB.
Yeah, 1 was...
Intro of OB in 1 will be like one of my favorite Loki moments, hands down.
The scene of them talking in past and present is like
so
one
good.
of my favorite things. Like I love that
so good. Much. But I am pretty much right with you. I'm gonna give I'll give episode 3 a 5 as well. Really phenomenal. Love the time period stuff.
Yeah,
like
so good.
And Jonathan Majors is great as Victor Timely. Really great creepy moment from Misfits.
Oh my god! I
like
never
okay,
that.
The moment where she puts herself on the face of the mannequin, I was like, oh, "This is not the direction I thought this was going."
No, I wanted to make like the meme where it's like the it's like the horny dog and it's like bonked with like
the bog, bonking Miss Minutes. Okay, well maybe we'll make that for you and we'll post that. But that's perfect. Go to Horny Joe.
I did see the other meme that's not family friendly. That was very funny. You know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about.
I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but anyways, so yeah, great episode. Was still somewhat of a building episode, I feel like. Sure. But episode 4, best episode so far. Man, some of the best horror elements in the MCU. Like, I mean, we loved some of the horror elements in Multiverse of Madness, but it kind of felt few and far in between. Like there were great moments, but didn't feel overall like a horror-y story. This episode was dark and it hit hard. Yeah, intense, man. And what a banger of a cliffhanger to end on, with Victor Timely being spaghettied and potentially the whole MCU being reset. Just wild. So anyways, 6 out of 6 for me on that one. Just a great episode. And this is shaping up to be, I mean, I loved Loki season 1.
Yeah.
Season 2 is the same energy, potentially surpassing it, based on these last 2 episodes. So looking forward to 5 and 6.
The finale is really going to be the clincher, because I think the season 1 finale is so strong.
Yeah. So, and I think there were some elements of season 1 that just maybe had a hard time like meshing within the episodes. Actually, going back and doing a rewatch really did help, because like I knew where it was leading to. But watching that the first time, I was like, man, how does this all connect?
Right,
like it was kind of hard to make everything like mesh. But that, like you said, that finale just kind of wrapped everything together. Really great way to tie up that season leading into another season. So hoping for that for season 2 as well.
Yeah, I'm wondering if anything will lead into kind of like what Deadpool is going to be about, or at least what we've kind of heard what Deadpool is going to be about.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of different things. Most recently that the TVA is going to be very prominent in Deadpool 3.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious.
Yeah. Curiosity is at a peak right now for Deadpool 3.
And I mean, it already was. I mean, you don't need much more. Saying,
Hugh Jackman is in. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if it's more curiosity or just straight up hype. Like, I don't care what this movie's about. Hugh Jackman is Wolverine in it. I don't care.
Valid and same.
Yeah.
When that announcement was made, I was like, Ryan Reynolds.
Oh my
gosh. You crazy bastard. I love you.
You did it. Oh my gosh. So good. But anyways, thank you so much, Sean, for joining us. We're going to wrap it up here. Anything in closing that you want to mention about Loki, or the whole season, or episodes 3 and 4? Anything else you want to mention?
I think we covered it all. I'm very happy to finally get to sit down and talk this stuff with you. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, been a pleasure. And like for like a couple minutes there, when we were getting into Secret Invasion and other things, I was like, man, we could really just keep going with this for a really long time. But I guess we need to eventually get back to Loki and wrap up some other things. So I'm glad we got to go on a little bunny trail and talk a little bit more broad scope MCU. That was really fun.
Yeah, me too. It's like a trigger word for me.
Secret Invasion.
I'm just going. I'm gone.
Yeah, dude, I totally get it. Anyways, thank you so much, Sean. We appreciate you for being on the Infinity Bros podcast. You can go ahead and tell our listeners where they can find you on the internet.
Yeah, just metalcorenerds.com. Easy. You can find all links there. All social media at Metalcore Nerds. Search Metalcore Nerds on any podcasting platform. You'll find us. And if you want to check us out on Adobe, again, it's adobe.com or the Adobe app every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can check out our show live.
And if you're coming here to listen to Sean for the first time in the Infinity Bros podcast, you can check out theinfinitybros.com for all of our links. We're on any major podcast platform as well, and prominently on TikTok as well. So if you guys are interested in Magic the Gathering, Robbie just got done with his football season. He's a football coach, and they just wrapped up their season, and he's going to be streaming quite a bit more on TikTok now. So Magic the Gathering, and Robbie and Jared are big into that stuff. And they just announced a Marvel crossover that is coming like in 2026. Long ways away, but still, Marvel and Magic the Gathering, it's coming. Nobody saw that coming, but here we are. That for us, that's like the intersection of like our two big things that we talk about on the podcast. So for us, it's like, what is happening right now? So if you want to hear about that, you can check out our latest episode of the Infinity Bros podcast, episode 182, our Magic Monthly for October. Jarrett and Robbie break down all the latest sets and stuff coming out, talk a little bit about the Marvel announcement that is coming down the road. So yeah, wherever you're listening, however you're listening, thank you so much for making us a part of your podcast experience. We love you 3000. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at the Infinity Bros. You can also check out our website at theinfinitybros.com for links, reviews, and sweet merch. Feel free to send listener feedback via social media or email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.